Jan was lulled into a state of tranquility by the tranquility of the afternoon, which was characterized by the gentle hum of the dishwasher and the warmth of her coffee mug in her palms. She was immersed in thought as she leaned against the kitchen counter, and the aroma of cinnamon filled the air. The trees outside swayed lightly, their leaves casting shifting shadows through the window. Jan had nearly forgotten about the crates in the basement that Jerry had promised to empty weeks ago. However, she had long since acquired the ability to refrain from pestering him. She was aware of which battles were worth fighting and which ones were best left unfought after 30 years of marriage. That was the instant when Jerry's voice echoed from below, cutting through the peaceful moment with its sharp and urgent tone. "Please, Jan, descend to this location immediately." She blinking, her heartbeat skipping a beat. Was there a leak? Had he fallen? She hastily descended the stairs, her slippers scraping against the floor as she approached the basement door. As she descended, the stairs creaked under her weight. The single flickering light cast long shadows, and the chilly air from the basement enveloped her like a shiver. She observed Jerry standing in the far corner, surrounded by boxes and scattered documents. He held a faded pink volume in his hand. She was unable to exhale. She cried out, "Jerry, that better not be my diary," in an attempt to disguise it as a joke. However, there was no mirth in her tone. Jerry slowly turned, and Jan experienced a chilling sense of dread as she observed the expression on his face. It was a unique combination of betrayal, incredulity, and devastation, which she had never before witnessed. "Your diary?" Jerry's voice was quivering and low. "Is it the same one in which you recorded those memories?" A sudden wave of apprehension rose in Jan's chest, causing her to freeze. "I used to scribble down the ridiculous things," she said in a hurry, but her voice deteriorated. Jerry's eyes scanned the text as he turned another page. Her midsection contorted. "I am not of the opinion that it was all mere nonsense," he stated, his voice abruptly becoming icy. "I am no longer aware of your identity as a result of the information I have just read." Her thorax vibrated as her heart beat. He read aloud, his voice quivering as he recited fragments from her past writings which she had composed prior to their marriage. She believed that certain words had been interred for an extended period of time. Hearing him read about the men with whom she had previously been involved, her infidelities, and her desires, her breath seized. Despite Jan's desire to scream and tear the book from his hands, her feet were frozen. Jerry's voice was tense with fury as he continued to peruse the pages, each entry revealing an additional painful truth. "What was the reason for your retention of this item?" Murmured. "What is the purpose of maintaining a record of your infidelity toward me?" She stated with a voice that was scarcely audible, "I did not cheat. Not during our marriage, not at that time. Before we were even engaged, it occurred." Jerry's expression was bleak as he dropped the book and then reached for another carton. Jan's pulse plummeted as she observed him extract an antiquated Polaroid of her. She was younger, carefree, and surrounded by a group of males in the photograph. A memory of wild parties and blurred boundaries, it was the type of reckless night she used to have in her 20s. His hands were quivering as he held the photograph, gazing at it as if it were a weapon. "What is the reason for your retention of this item?" Murmured. She murmured, "I forgot it was there," but Jerry's visage contorted in disbelief and pain. His voice was low as he allowed the photograph to descend. "Exit. What is the matter?" Jan's voice was trembling. "I have no intention of departing." However, Jerry did not respond. He refrained from begging or screaming. The weight of the betrayal between them was palpable as he stood there. The subsequent days were a blur. Jan remained at her parents' residence, but the burden of her secrets was weighing her down. The scandal was now spreading like wildfire, and her phone was inundated with texts from friends, neighbors, and even her children, all of whom were inquiring about it. Jan was acutely aware of the distorted and cruel allegations that were circulating. Her daughter yelled at her, her voice quivering with rage. "Dear mother, I observed the content you submitted. What is your explanation for this? What methods could you employ to accomplish this?" Jan attempted to provide an explanation, however, her daughter interrupted her. "You deceived us, our mother, our father, and all others." Jan was left in silence as the line went silent, her heart breaking under the weight of her daughter's words. Subsequently, Jerry returned to her parents' residence 1 week later. He did not request entry, but he stood at the door clutching the pink diary as if it were poison. He discreetly handed it to her, saying, "You left this behind." Jan apologized, but Jerry interrupted her. "Please save it. I do not require your apologies." The conversation hung heavily in the air as they sat down at the kitchen table. She said quietly, "You informed them of everything." "I was compelled to." He responded with a blunt tone, "They were entitled to the truth." She murmured, her voice trembling, "And I was uncertain about our daughter. I was unaware that she was not yours. I simply desired to believe that she was." While Jerry's irises grew softer, the agony persisted. He stated, "You ought to have disclosed the truth to me." "I am aware that," Jan murmured, "and I regret not doing so despite the discomfort it caused." Jerry stood up after a prolonged period of silence. He announced, "I am relocating and I must begin anew." His voice broke. Jan experienced a rupture in her heart. "This is it, January. I am incapable of cohabitating with an individual whom I am unable to trust." She gazed at him in a state of helplessness. She gently inquired, "That concludes the matter?" He responded, "That concludes our conversation," and departed, transferring the final vestiges of their shared existence to his possession. Jan did not glance back as she departed from their residence. It was no longer hers. The man she had cherished for an extended period of time was now an unknown individual, and the foundation she had established was in ruins. The days passed in a haze. Jan remained in her childhood chamber, enveloped by the recollection of a time that had long since passed. She was unable to overcome the sensation of being bereft. She was shattered by Jerry's departure. However, the truth that had been concealed was now revealed, and she was unable to reverse the consequences. It was not until she received a text message from Susie, the ex-wife of one of the men she had written about, that the final piece of her existence fell apart. The message read, "You reap what you sow," and Jan knew it was the final bit of bitterness she had to endure. Jerry submitted the separation documents 1 week later. A legal document that requests her signature without any explanation or compassion. She executed it not because she was prepared to depart, but rather because she was aware that Jerry had already done so. However, she was unable to relinquish control due to an internal force. She required closure. She returned to the residence they had shared for years, which was now nearly vacant. Jerry was in the process of packaging his belongings. Despite her awareness of the impending conclusion, she was compelled to express her thoughts. Jan began, "I do not anticipate your forgiveness. However, I must assure you that I have never ceased to love you. I erred, I was irresponsible, but I never lost faith in us." Jerry did not respond immediately. He ultimately admitted, "I do not harbor animosity toward you, Jan. However, I am incapable of cohabitating with an individual whom I do not trust." Jan nodded in comprehension, despite the fact that the term was painful. "Jerry, I bid you farewell." She did not glance back as she exited the residence for the final time. She was aware that the life she had known was over, but she also knew that she had to continue to progress, regardless of the hardships she would face. The story's just beginning. There are more broken hearts and dark secrets ahead. Hit like, subscribe, and keep exploring with Love Missteps.